everyone. This is Bergen Sullivan from JCSI. I'm here today with Bret Feig joining us for an interview in our Talent Chronicles series. Thanks so much, Bret, for being here today.
Thank you, Bergen.
So you've worked as a talent acquisition executive in a variety of industries with a more prevalent emphasis in marketing and communications. Do you want to give us a quick explanation of how you got into talent acquisition?
Yeah, absolutely. I think like most, it was sort of a bait and switch, right? I was right out of college. I was working some sales job, and I got a call from a recruiting firm. And at that point, I didn't even know what a recruiting firm was. I just assumed they find people jobs. They wanted me to come in to talk about a job that they had found for me, and came in and like, oh no, we want you to work here. I'm like, as a recruiter? Like, yeah, no, sales is perfect. And I'm like, okay, certainly, it was a very buttoned up firm at the time. And I'm like, this sounds exciting. That's how I fell into it, kind of the bait and switch.
All right. And what's it like working with talent acquisition in the PR and communications field?
I could imagine not terribly different than many other fields. I think the marketing or marketing communication field has been more focused on candidate journey and candidate experience. And, it's obviously a broad generalization, but they're in the business of controlling language, right? Controlling verbiage, controlling the image that they want to portray. And that filtered down to how we operated from a talent acquisition. So we just a little bit more finely tuned to make sure we're providing a good candidate experience. Maybe we just understood the ramifications or the consequences of providing a poor candidate experience and seeing that net out or manifest itself in things like poor Glassdoor ratings or other types of feedback. We sort of understood how that communication works. So
Right. And kind of going off of that, how do you focus your communication with connecting and conversing with your candidates at the talent acquisition level when you are centered around communication as a business?
I imagine how almost everyone should, and that's approaching it with a high level of empathy, but also a high level of transparency, being able to give people a sense of an honest understanding of what the opportunities are and how they fit, what the process is sort of going to look like, and being able to come through on that in sort of a timely focus, right? I don't think anything I'm saying is remaking the world or going to light anyone on fire, but you'd be really surprised how many companies aren't putting the candidate at the center of their process as the most important. Yet these companies are, spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to invest in, new business and sales teams to go out there and win new clients. You have a team that's speaking to hundreds of potential future clients on a day-to-day basis and have yet to really understand how that really could impact things up channel.
Right. And kind of going into a little bit of your past experiences, what was it like building an in-house executive search team?
Yeah. So when I first arrived at IPG's Media Brands, which is a clustering of about 8 or 9 different agencies, all in the same building, all working on the same clients. First thing I did was build out, an executive search team. And that was really interesting because you were sort of applying a lot of the high touch customer service driven mentality like you would in a traditional firm. But my goal was to really partner with the various leadership throughout the Media Brands ecosystem to understand their business challenges and understand how we were going to drive that through the lens of TA. And this ultimately would help them not only find better talent, but cut down on the hundreds of thousands of dollars that they were spending every year on retained search firms. So it was a journey, I would say. It was an exercise in building relationships and understanding what the various pain points were, which could be very different if you're talking to someone in finance than if you're talking, to a chief technology officer, but understanding what that looked like, being able to create a process. And that's just not about let's go out and find people, but to understand the candidate journey, to understand what we're actually looking for. What is that person going to be expected to do when they get on board? And how are we going to actually evaluate what success looks like, and then crafting that process around that and seeing it all the way through. It was a really good experience. I started off as sort of a one-man team, right? A solo band, if you will, but eventually grew that out to be 4 or 5 people. And before you knew it, the feedback coming back from the business on our success and level of talent and speed and all those sort of things caused us to expand our efforts. And at one point, we sort of took over all the roles that were director and VP and above, which was awesome. It was a kind of a validation of really taking a partnership approach to it, taking a we're going to get through this together rather than a delivery center. Rather than, okay, tell me what you want. Okay, I'm going to produce candidates. It's no, let's think about this from a bigger picture today and 90 days down the road, and let's craft what we're looking for, and then find someone who not only is skilled but really wants to and is motivated to do what that job is.
Right. And what kind of challenges did you come upon when you were doing that, and how were you able to overcome those?
Oh yeah. So challenges. One was the first initial challenge was just building those relationships with the business and getting them to understand how we were going to deliver the same level, if not better talent than they were used to when they were spending, 20 or 30 or $50,000 for a retained search firm. And there was no secret sauce in how we did that. It was a lot of really understanding their business. It was spending time with them, spending time within the business, right? So not having recruiting meetings, but actually interacting and getting to see people doing the jobs that we were going to be hiring for, or working with what this job was really going to end up driving. And a lot of it was kind of proof in the pudding. I think, once we were spending time with them up front and really understanding, then it was about delivering upon it, and success breeds success and word spreads quickly. So I think as soon as they saw, what, wow, that role got filled much quicker than I remember it ever happening in the past. And we really like what we ended up with. And I don't have to go to finance and explain why we now have a $50,000 bill. I think those three elements combined together was like, wow, this is a win-win-win across the board.
Right. And kind of going towards what you predict for the future, what types of market trends do you see affecting talent acquisition?
Yeah, that's a really good topic. So I see changes on a couple different fronts. One, I think every company is adjusting to a virtual or virtualized workforce. What does that mean? And what does that actually equate to? And how do we keep humanity within the process, right? Because few companies have been doing this across the board. Now companies are realizing they could tap into an untapped market, but you still have employees that are looking to stay connected, and having Zoom calls all day isn't the answer for it, isn't enough. So I see companies adapting to that as one. Two, I see the constant battle between new technology, automation, and humanization uh, playing out a little bit more. Technology is allowing certain part of the processes to be automated, but there's certain forces saying, okay, well, has it been automated too much, right? Is it becoming robotic where candidates aren't interacting with a real person, and they're not thinking about this as a real opportunity? It's a series of do not reply back sort of emails. Like, great, we want to meet with you at no reply at company.com. So I see the battling of those two forces, and ultimately I see a renewed focus, or an increased focus on the candidate experience all the way throughout the process. Candidates are realizing they have a choice, and what candidates value is different than it ever was before, where in the past it might have been salary and benefits, how much they're going to pay towards my medical or dental. I think now they're looking for companies who stand for ideals that they stand for, who are giving back, who are the image, who are in reality the image that they're portraying, right? They want to see that that's real, that the job ad is actually real, and the pictures that they see on social media aren't just curated. They want to really work for a company that resonates with them on a much deeper level than I think we've ever seen before. And I think that's what you're going to see sort of play out.
All right. And how do technological advances alter your work within talent acquisition and within PR communications?
Um, that's an interesting question. Technology pushes forward on an automation front. Looking for smarter, better ways to be able to touch more candidates or to engage with candidates at an earlier stage, to plan and not be reactive, but be able to plan 30, 60, or 90 days out. How do we engage today with the people who will be ready to make moves or ready to consider opportunities down the road? And I think as technology advances in that direction, the pushback is the risk of it becoming too automated. And you know, candidates aren't, they're not dumb. Like let's even stop using the word candidates. They're people, right? And they're not dumb. They've been exposed to extreme automation through marketing on every other channel. You know, they're the people who are trying to sell them cable service, magazine subscriptions. They're used to, oh, all of a sudden I see an ad of something that I just Googled. You know, it isn't a coincidence. So they're savvy, and they want that personal approach. They want a relationship driven process. And I think those are the two kind of opposing forces that technology is trying to solve for. I don't think there's one solution. I think there's a lot of different technologies in the space that help at different stages. But I don't think the machine is ever going to take over the human. I really think it's going to be about spending more time being able to automate some of the processes that don't necessarily have an impact on people, whether that's administrative, whether that's scheduling, you know, that sort of thing, to free up recruiters' time to spend more time on actually interacting and building relationships and understanding on a much deeper level what their company needs and what that team or group or business unit's culture is, and seeing recruiters being part of the business, but also a bit of a matchmaker at the same time, and that from a very humanistic standpoint.
Okay. And I understand that earlier in your career, you were kind of more focused on growth, as anyone usually is, and kind of your future opportunities. But more recently, you have shifted to a focus on stability in your career. How do you view stability in the talent acquisition field? So what does that kind of look like to you?
It's an illusion that has disappeared. And I was, I'm not saying that as someone who's bearish about stability within TA. I'm saying that as someone who's waking up just like 90% of the people out there who assumed, you know, they were risky small startups with high reward, and there was stability in large companies, but maybe a more, maybe a slower kind of growth or a more growth path or a more focused position. And I think what a lot of people are realizing in the wake of COVID is that a lot of that stability was a well-positioned illusion, right? Or something they took for granted. And that is also the case fivefold within TA, especially TA from an in-house corporate standpoint. When companies are hiring, TA is a business partner. We are a cost savings center. We are a strategic unit to really help companies drive their business goals, but through the lens of talent. And you could say that in a broad sense. Once hiring stops, a lot of companies look at TA or can look at TA as a bit of a cost center, you know, an easy short-term solution. And that's sort of what you're seeing play out in the marketplace today, where you're seeing massive layoffs and big, large, global, very well-respected companies slicing, you know, 50, 60, 70% of their TA sourcing teams, not even slicing the fat, not even getting rid of poor performers. Really saying, okay, we're not hiring. Well, goodbye, 30-person sourcing team, you know, we'll figure that out once we regain hiring. And I think for TA, for the future of TA, we really need to focus on not being that delivery center, not focusing on putting seats in butts, but continuing to be a business partner to the business, to be a partner to HR and to be an equal with HR, just as a lot of HR BPs are helping the business solve challenges through the lens of, you know, their mechanisms, whether it's talent, whether it's ER, whether it's OD. TA really needs to take up that sort of role and be able to leverage data better and be able to understand the core business and bring those two pieces together to help a company plan and be more successful, not just the recipients of the marching orders. I think that's what's going to define kind of the successful TA of the future.
Right. Okay. And are there any final thoughts or anything that we didn't cover that you would like to share?
I mean, it depends. We have the next 4 hours. No. No, I think we covered. I think we covered a lot of it. The only other one piece I would throw out there is analytics, which is equal to candidate experience in its own right, becoming more and more important. That someone in TA or recruiting today that wants to build a career should pay attention and should start augmenting their own understandings of people and analytics and how those two go together and how companies take and utilize those data to make very strategic decisions for the future. I think
Right.
that's really important.
Are there specific analytics that you find yourself paying more attention to in your role?
Yeah, I mean, people call it business analytics or people analytics. It is all the numbers that help define what's working, what's efficient, and what's not. To define where we're finding our candidates, define where we need to look that produces the best, diverse channels. To understand how talent is not just found, but how are they being brought through the talent process, and what is that onboarding like, and who is actually successful here. For a long time, it's been sort of opinions loosely based on anecdotal data. It's like, oh, this is what I've experienced, and we've asked a few people, so this is what I think it is. Well, now it's more about how do we leverage data that's coming from the business, but also market data to understand trends, understand supply and demand, understand how different channels are yielding, but not in just the traditional sense. Like, okay, we've hired 5 people that we found off this board and they seem to work out, but from a long-term perspective, what are the numbers actually telling us? And how do we use that to be more accurately predictive when thinking holistically of the skill sets that a company is going to need 6 months down the road? How do we prepare for that today? Or how do we think about that even from an L&D standpoint, preparing our current workforce to face the challenges of tomorrow, or else, tomorrow we'll be looking to replace our current workforce, right? When we already have great talents. And I think that all comes down to understanding the numbers and being able to use that to draw relationships or relationship type correlations from it.
Right, absolutely. Well, we really appreciate you taking your time and joining us for our Talent Chronicles series. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Bergen.